Modernism arose as a reaction against the perceived excesses of Romanticism and Victorianism. Modernists saw Romanticism as overly sentimental and Victorianism, despite its progress, as overly focused on social decorum and morality, stifling individual expression. This led to significant experimentation in art and literature. World War I profoundly impacted modernism. The war's devastation led artists and writers to experiment with new forms, rejecting traditional styles and embracing fragmentation and abstraction. Major figures like Eliot, Woolf, and Picasso redefined art, reflecting the era's uncertainty and questioning of established norms. Mid-20th century postmodernism challenged modernism's belief in universal truths, embracing irony, skepticism, and the deconstruction of established forms. It rejected objective truth for subjective experience and multiple perspectives, questioning whether a clean break from the past was even possible.
Hello and welcome to our four-part podcast on modern literature. I'm Shadman Sakib and this is my co-host.
Nafiza and Pushpita.
And today we're joined by Asif Kamal, sir. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our episode today is on the various isms of modern literature, how modernist literature came to be and what the origin for it was and how we transitioned out of it. We'll go through a little bit of each of the perhaps well-known writers of the era and learn a little bit about how they contributed to this era of literature. So let us begin with the beginning then. We know that modernist literature had many previous eras before it, the Victorian literature era and various others. But the one that everybody seems to mention is the Romantic era of literature and it having various connections with modernist literature. Could you tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah, modernism is not a very simple term to define. It cannot be defined in a very simple language. It is a very complex phenomena, you can say. It is an umbrella term. Okay, when we define modernism, automatically a number of other isms come together. Okay, and all these isms combined the concept of modernism. Okay, as you were saying, it emerged from Romanticism. Yes, of course, there is a root there. I mean, embedded in Romanticism, like the concept of individualism, feelings, then intuition. Okay, these are some of the basic elements of Romanticism, right? So modernism obviously have some legacy with this concept of individualism and feelings and choice. Okay, but this Romanticism, in fact, had a very serious political, historical, and cultural background. Okay, if you think of the emergence of modernism, we can talk about massive world events like world wars, okay, and Holocaust, okay, and these are some political turmoils, the atrocities of World War, okay, brought the concept of modernism to the fore. And along with world wars, there are some other movements, social movements, like we can think of Russian Revolution, we can think of Spanish Civil War, okay. And along with this, of course, you cannot but mention industrialization, the massive industrialization, and also urbanization along with massive industrialization.
Which was a bit of a reaction to the spiritualism of Romanticism.
Right.
It's almost a contrast.
Yes, it is obviously a contrast. And these, I mean, important, game-changing events or historical context, okay, made the basic of modernism. Okay, and of course, along with modernism, there are some other isms like emerging. Like we can think of existentialism, we can think of absurdism, and then we can think of Imagism. Okay, there are other isms like, which has their roots so in modernism. Yeah.
So modernism was a bit of a reaction to
Right.
both the historical context and you could say the reaction just happened to be a contrast to the previous era
Right,
of
right.
literature.
Here, I'd like to say that, sir, if we think that the transition from romanticism to modernism, and like, what is the reason that the writers of the modern period didn't feel that the romanticism's relevance is not very much present in the late 19th centuries? What made them think that way?
As I told you, because of the massive changes in the socio-political context, okay, because there was a kind of sense of loss of identity, and there was a kind of sense of loss of trust on the logical reasoning of the social construction,
There's
right?
like a social upheaval.
Yeah, upheaval, okay, which shattered the belief on the humanities, the big words like humanity and then values and ethics, okay, they were all brought to the question, right? People were thinking of humanism or humanity, but at the same time we see the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, okay, in the World War, and the atrocities of the war, and then we see the Holocaust, the First War and Second World War. So these were the incidents that shattered people's belief on the traditional concept of like religion and then humanity and then monarchy. Okay, all the established social phenomena did not seem to have any logical meaning,
Any value.
any
Like,
value. Okay,
people are seeking meaning, but there isn't any.
yeah, and that's why existentialism emerged, okay, from there. Okay, they found that, okay, there is no meaning, okay, behind everything that people are bragging of, all these big words like humanity and all these things. So we can find the works of a number of writers in the modernist period. We can think of Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, and then we can think of Albert Camus, and then we can think of Dostoevsky. Okay, their writings, okay, brought the concept of existentialism to the fore. Okay, they talk about the freedom, they talk about choice, right? Okay, and along with this, the concept of meaninglessness, okay, emerged from there, the absurdism. Okay, and from there also another phenomena came to the fore, that is absurdism or absurdity of life. Okay, what does it mean? Like absurd, something absurd. Okay, we can find in the work of Samuel Beckett, and then we can find of Waiting for Godot, you see.
Franz Kafka also falls
Franz
into
Kafka,
absurdism quite a
right,
bit.
and Eugenia Ionesco, right, their writings, like you were mentioning Waiting for Godot, right? We see that they are full of activities. Okay, there are two characters, Gideon. They are full of activities, but none of their activities make any sense. Okay,
Doesn't make sense.
it doesn't make.
Yeah.
It's
They
like-
wait for something, but they don't know what they are waiting for. Okay,
In short, like,
yeah,
they don't know that if it will come or not.
right,
It's almost like a simulation of modern life in a way, where it's
right,
a cycle of nothing happening constantly every day.
right,
In a way,
right.
where Vladimir and what was the name of the other?
Gogo, and then
yeah.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Vladimir and Gogo, and neither of them seem to have any actual objective. They're just constantly waiting, which feels very much like a recreation of the life that the general public seemed to adopt post World War One and World War Two, almost in a way.
Right. It is. Life is kind of circular. Okay, like it is roaming around the same thing. They're coming again to the. They're moving forward. They're coming back to the starting point again. Okay. So this is also, one of the features of modern literature, like along with the concept of a stream of consciousness and then defragmentation. Yeah? Like if you talk about a stream of consciousness, we can not but mention Virginia Woolf, and then we cannot but mention James Joyce. Okay, and the portrait of artist as a young man. Also, we can think of T.S. Eliot. Okay, the Westland. These are all connected. You saw Westland, the barren land. The world is totally barren without any productivity, right? Okay, this is the simulation of the life, modern life that we are leading. Okay, after the World War, the whole world seemed to be barren of any kind of values. Okay, any kind of ethical or logical cohesion, right? So everything is illogical, okay, without any meaning. And along with this, human being loses his identity, okay, of humanity, okay. So everything is circular. So fragmentation is also one of the.
As you were mentioning that there is a lack of meaning, but as we are human beings, we tend to seek constantly like the meaning of our existence, why we are the way we are. So in that case, can we say that the ism of absurdism, it is more or less very much relevant in present day also, in our present day literature, in our everyday life? We can see that absurdism is present in, it's present everywhere.
Yeah, of course, it's present everywhere. As you mentioned that we are searching for meaning. Okay, no, we do not find any meaning, but the meaning is not inherent in anything. Meaning you have to make. Like I can mention Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus, right? Okay, so he is incessantly doing the meaningless thing, rolling up the boulder up to the tip of the mountain, and knowing that this boulder will roll down again, but still he has to do it again and again. He doesn't commit suicide. Why? He doesn't end it because he doesn't want to make his Punisher happy. He doesn't want to make the Punisher Jews happy.
In the original myth, Zeus does punish him by forcing him to do that.
So if he surrenders, that means that his enemy will be the winner. So by repeating the same meaningless things, he makes the meaning of his meaningless things. That means you have to make out the meaning out of your meaningless context. Okay, so meaning is to be made. Okay, it will not be inherent. Like in everyday life, in modern life, you see that things are meaningless, but it is you who will find out the meaning from here, right? So meaning is to be made. Okay, it is the modern man's, individual task. Like it is the, merit of the credit of the modern man to find the meaning from meaninglessness. So it is also relevant in modern context. Everywhere we find everything is happening around us. Like think of the wars, think of the war in Philistine, okay, Palestine, and then think of the war in Russia and Ukraine. You think of the war recently happening in India and Pakistan, okay. Everywhere they are fighting for each other and they are making their own meaning. And we, as an audience, as a passive audience, we are also bedazzled, puzzled. We don't find any meaning. Why are they doing this? They know that there is nothing to gain at the end, right? But still they are pursuing this war. And as we are the active, passive, viewer, okay, we are the observer, passive observers, we are at lost. We do not find any meaning here. And we also struggling to find the meaning out of this meaninglessness, okay? And everyone has their own role to play here, okay? We can raise our voice, we can contribute to our by spreading our own opinion, or by through protests, okay, or through the aid to the sufferers, okay, of the war, okay. We can contribute in our own capacities, okay, to the upliftment of this condition, okay. And by doing this we'll find the meaning. Like think of one of the blessings, I can say, that is the religion, okay, that gives us meaning to all the absurdity. If you find that ultimately everyone is dying, everyone knows the bad impact of this war, but still they are waging war against each other, okay. And then where is the hope? Where is the hope? And ultimately we find one of the hope is religion. Religion gives us a kind of resort, final kind of shelter, where we say, okay, at least we have something to gain after life, okay. And that's why people do not commit suicide. That's why people are still having hope. Otherwise we'll become hopeless, okay, we'll become pessimists.
On the topic of existentialism, I also wanted to mention there is often a degree of confusion between existentialism and nihilism. Both have many inherent similarities, but there are obviously many differences between them. Could you tell us a little bit about?
Yes, nihilism is totally negative, okay. You do not find any objective here, but existentialism has at least something at the end to gain. That means through the feeling of existentialism, you look after the meaning, you try to find out the meaning at the end. Okay, you have some hidden hope, subconscious hope hidden here in the concept of existentialism. Okay.
It reminds me a little bit of the Darkling Thrush,
Yes.
where
Yes.
the thrush itself sings at the end of the poem, even though the poet himself doesn't really see why he's happy and singing, even though everything else around it seems a bit hopeless.
The writer's approach toward the world that he's residing in is more like a bit towards pessimistic thought process, but while the appearance of the thrush itself is like a bit of there is this sort of optimism that maybe the author or the writer isn't saying, but it is there.
Right.
So in that sense,
You have to discover it.
yes, we must find it.
I guess in that sense, it's very similar to what you just said about we ourselves cannot see the point of an action that somebody else is doing, but because they are in it, they know the meaning that they're giving. In this case, the thrush singing despite the very dreary land around.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Right. In the same way, think of T.S. Eliot's Westland. Okay. Here we find all the negativities here, but still there is hope. Okay, to come out of this barren land. Okay, so if there is nothing here to, grow in the land, but still there is something from their ashes. Okay, like the phoenix. Okay, you come bring out something new. Okay, revival, regeneration of the old. Okay.
Sir, as we are exploring the isms of modernism, I would like to say that Imagism is also a very significant part of the modernism era, and
also symbolism.
Yes, and Imagism itself is like the author or the writers are using clear, concise images, which very much contrasts or is a bit different than the approach of Romanticism itself, from where the whole idea of modernism initiated, or like the just before modernism there was this romantic period or the romanticism. So what do you think that authors like Ezra Pound, they are the foregrounder or the one who first initiated the use of imagism in their literary works? Like what
Hilda Doolittle and then Carlos. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So what exactly influenced them, or like the approach towards imagism? What was the sole purpose, or like why did the author
There was
use
one
those
feeling
things?
at a certain moment that language is inadequate. Okay. Instead of descriptive, nature of literature is, has a kind of tendency to move forward to a kind of visual or images concept. Here you go for the imagism to reduce the economy use of language. Okay, they use the use of descriptive language instead of using the images, like metaphoric presentation ideas and concepts. Okay, sometimes language is not enough. Okay, like it reminds me of Treatment Named Desire, and then also it reminds me of William Faulkner's, okay, As I Lay Dying. Okay, where Eddie Burnley said that the language is not enough. Okay, it cannot describe things. That's why there in that novel we see that some images are used, like symbols, like think of coffin. It was a kind of descriptive paragraph, and suddenly instead of the word coffin there is an image of coffin, okay, inside, embedded in the description. Okay, so why? Because the image of coffin gives us something more than the word coffin itself. Okay, it gives you a kind of
A sense of in-depth meaning.
Right? It helps you to go deeper inside, and it helps you to implore your senses, stimulate your senses, right? Visual senses. Okay, so more than the descriptive paragraph, more than the words can actually bring, right? Okay, so this is the function of imagism in literature. Okay, and in modern literature is full of images, poems, and then art. Not only literature, in other parts of art, in other types of art, like think of music, think of paintings, arts, okay? Everywhere we find the images paintings, and then yeah, everywhere. So, yeah, right.
Would the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock also fall into this category to a certain degree?
Yeah, of course, why not? It's also fallen to a certain degree in the
Because there's a lot of imagery that they show us throughout the poem that really paints a picture in our head almost, which I feel like is a very important part.
imagery is, if you consider it as a generic term, it is common to the literature of everywhere. Okay, and everywhere you find imagery, but imagery, using imagery and imagism is something different. Okay, imagism is much deeper than the simple imagery used. Okay, it also requires brevity. Okay, so here you have to go deeper to find out the layers of meanings, okay, which is unspoken. And in simple imagery, there are description, okay, which creates images, which stimulates your senses, all the five senses. Okay. And imagery, it doesn't require image in imagism, it doesn't require to go for that detailed description. Okay. A minute description of anything,
which was something inherent to previous literary works quite a bit,
right,
but this doesn't seem to be the case.
Right.
Sir, as you mentioned earlier, that along with imagism, symbolism is also a very significant part of the modernist literatures. So, sir, we can see that in the modern period's literary pieces, there is huge, like the use of symbolism is very much observed. So, in your opinion, sir, what do you think that the use of symbolism in like literary works like poetry, we can see that there are a lot of symbolisms usually seen in poetry in comparison to other literary works. So, in your opinion, what do you think that the use of symbolism in, for example, poetry, it creates a sense of understanding to, like, it creates a sense of understanding to the readers, or like makes them a bit confused, or like what is the author trying to say?
Yeah, actually, now in modern, if you are a modern reader, then we do not much rely on the writer or author. Like reader's response theory, we apply reader's response theory, and you know the concept of death of the author, right? When a literary work is written and it is with the audience, then author is dead.
It's up to the
Okay?
audience.
It is up to the audience or the reader how they will find out the meaning. Okay, even if the meaning which the author doesn't know that whether he or she has embedded in his writing, the reader or the audience can find the meaning from there. Okay, and audience, the reader or the writer can become surprised that
it wasn't their intention.
It wasn't my intention, and that writer will become surprised. Wow, it can be analyzed in that way. I have written this thing. Okay, so it depends on the context of the reader, type of the reader, the background, educational background of the reader, how they will find out the meaning from there. Okay, so it depends on the writer, reader, the meaning. So if you think that the symbolism is confusing, no, it's not confusing the reader, rather it is providing an ample opportunity to the reader who will be seeing a text from multiple perspectives, because modern world and modern literature is not unifocal. Okay, it has multiplicity, pluralism, the concept of pluralism. Okay, and you can see the text from multiple perspectives. Okay, so it doesn't confuse, rather it creates opportunities for newer meanings from the text to bring out. Yeah, it's open-ended, because this is literature, nature of literature. Okay, so there is nothing you can say this is fixed. Okay, so there is no place of fixities. Okay?
Almost like a matter of perspective.
Yes, it is not a kind of math like 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, there it can be 5 also. Okay, this is the way of life. Life is like this. Okay, this is, as I was saying, that is a simulation of life. Literature is a simulation of life. So in the same way, a literary piece can be seen from multiple perspectives. Individual situation can be analyzed or judged from individual viewers from multiple perspectives. Okay, I know you in one way. As a teacher, I will see the incidents of your life in one way, but someone from your family, he knows or she knows you from another way. Okay, from other arena, other windows are open to them, but those windows are closed to me. So I am seeing you from one side, that person is seeing you from another side. Okay, seeing the same way, every person related to your life have their own perspective to see you. In the same way, if you think a literature is a piece of life, okay, it can be viewed from multiple perspectives, from multiple persons. Okay, so if you put a symbol there, then the fixities of meaning is, the concept of fixing the meaning is shattered. Okay, it becomes open-ended more, right? So because it can be analyzed from whatever way you want. Okay, in whatever angle you can want to see the things. Okay, in whatever way you see the things, you will be able to find the meaning. Like, think of the songs. Okay, most of the songs when played, you will feel like as if it is sung for you. It relates to your life, right?
Very.
Because this is the nature of a song. This is the nature of symbolism, which songs and poetry is basically based on. Okay, this is the symbolism which helps the reader or the audience to find out the meaning from his own angle, own perspectives, own experience. Okay, so it is not confusing, rather it is creating more opportunities for the reader, for the audience.
So you would say this this open-endedness, this multiple perspective to look at this literature is something unique to modernist literature, whereas earlier eras of literature would have had things more spelled out, much more this is this and that's it.
Yeah, it is new to modernism because of the audience, the nature of the audience, and like perspectives are changed, but there were fixed formula earlier given, but now audience is not confined within any formula, right? Okay, that's why the concept of openness is there. Even the earlier text can be analyzed from modernist perspectives. Okay, and bringing a modernist reader can bring out newer meaning from the older text.
So we can
okay?
look at Shakespeare, say,
Yeah, of course.
something like The Merchant of Venice. And
Right.
we can look at Shylock as the protagonist of the
of
story.
course. Yeah, of course. We can look at Shiloh as the protagonist. We can look at, Ravan as the tragic hero. We can look at Satan as the tragic hero, right?
Yeah.
So these are the modern interpretation, but earlier people have never thought that they will praise Ravan as the protagonist, as the tragic hero, or the Satan in Paradise Lost as the tragic hero. No, okay. So these are the newer perspectives. Even since you have a newer perspectives, you can analyze the older text from these modern perspectives. Okay, there's a modernist point of view. Okay.
That's very
It is not that embedded in the new literature, because I said that literature is a life, is a replication, as a kind of simulation of life. So life was there, having the same complexities earlier. Maybe the nature was there, different. Mainly the nature was different, but the people were suffering from going through the same experience, critical complexities, right? Okay, like to be or not to be, the Hamlet. Okay, the confused Hamlet is everywhere. Okay, we are the modern audience, we are also Hamlets. Okay, so the same concept, the universal concept is present there in the Greek literature, in the Greek literature, in modern literature, in even earlier in the postmodern literature. Everywhere we have this embedded, because this is the simulation of life, and life was same. Okay, but there are new added dimensions. Okay, because of the experiences, because of new inventions, because of the technology, because of the mechanization, because of the industrialization, urbanization. There are
and
different
also
perspectives.
how the social structure changed.
Social
There's,
structure change.
the idea of democracy and open-mindedness, and people actually having the ability to think for themselves. The individualism that you mentioned
Right.
at the beginning
Right.
allows people to actually almost look at these things from a new
Right.
personal perspective.
Right, of
almost.
course.
That is very interesting. Let us move on to, since we've already covered pretty much all the major isms of modern literature, let's slowly come to the point of how modernism sort of ended or transitioned to a certain degree to what we call postmodernism. How did that exactly come to happen? What caused this?
Uh, you cannot call end of modernism or a kind of shift to postmodernism is a kind of reaction against modernism. Rather, I will say a kind of continuation of modernism. With the experiences, new era experiences, we see, as we are saying, the dimension is changing in the same way because of this technological advancement and then the criticality of experiences. We see the modernist perspectives is taken further, okay, with newer perspectives to see life. Okay, so along with this, we have a number of other like isms here, like think of post structuralism or deconstruction. Okay, these isms also come together, okay, with its own experiences. So I do not see an end of modernism. Rather, it is a kind of continuation with postmodernism. Okay, because the post is the further advancement of modernist concepts.
So this transition was almost the exact opposite of what happened with between Romanticism and modernism. This was more of a carryover, like a smooth follow-up to modernism to a certain degree. Could you?
I will not totally call modernism is against romanticism. Rather, romanticism provides a kind of base to move forward.
Move
towards
forward from
Towards
more,
modernism.
yeah.
Rather, you can call romanticism as a reaction against the new classical period, right? Okay, because these two concepts is quite totally opposite to each other, like formulaic and based on reason, new classical period, whereas romanticism is not based on reason, right? It's made based on emotion, intuition, right? Imagination. Okay, it gives more emphasis on human feelings. Okay, and if we talk about modernism, modernism is also connected with human feelings. Okay, it is not going against romanticism. Rather, it is a further friction. Okay, through the modern literature. Okay. Of all the human sensibilities and then senses or the feelings, okay, and the feeling of like think of the advance of new philosophical advancement, psychological advancement. Think of the emergence of psychological criticism, like by Sigmund Freud, and then we can talk about philosophical advancement by Jean-Paul Sartre. Okay, okay, they were uh, talking about human mind, human feelings also. Okay, they are related, connected, isn't it? So we cannot say that it is going totally against romanticism. Okay, they are continuous. In the same way, modernism or postmodernism is also a continuation of the modernism.
What would the difference be between them, though? Like, is there any difference between them, postmodernism and modernism? Like, what changed during this transition?
Basically, the transition is with human experiences, right? Okay, the complexities of human experiences. Okay, is totally different, totally different. This shattering of human hope. Okay, we also find in modern postmodern era the shattering of human hope, and we cannot consider them as a kind of period, rather a kind of concept of continuation of images. So um, instead of trying to find out the differentiating points, we can rather find out how this postmodern era is advanced, okay, with the earlier established isms. Okay.
Well, we are slowly coming to an end of the podcast. We'd like to end with a simple question to you. As we know, a lot of students of literature often find modern literature to be a bit, as we've already mentioned,
It is a bit overwhelming
a bit
for
overwhelming.
new readers,
Yeah.
those who are not like they're not new to modern literature. So it might feel a bit overwhelming to them.
It's a bit some people might feel a bit confused about how to approach this form of literature, this era of literature, the writers that constitute this. What would your advice be for students who are starting off reading modernist literature? Like, what kind of approach would you suggest they do for this?
One of the barriers I have seen in students is the linguistic skills, the skills in language, right? Okay. If you have good skill in language, you can understand what the writer is trying to say. And because you have to understand the symbolism, imagism, inherent, read between the lines, okay? Everything will not be said there, described there, okay? Stated there. Rather, they will be implied, okay? To understand the implications or implied meaning, you have to understand the use of language, okay? How the writer has used the word, the diction, okay, in that particular way. So I think the first barrier is the skills of language. I think students first need to develop the language skills, okay? And the approaches, I think they have to develop the critical thinking ability. They have that critical thinking ability, but the problem is their barrier, okay, of language. Okay? If they understand the language, they will be able to think critically and they will be able to articulate it or communicate their critical thoughts, right? But the problem is they cannot nourish or culture their critical thoughts because of the barrier of language. Because in the first stage, they are stuck. They cannot move forward. This is the problem. And when they're stuck in language, the barriers of language, they will find it boring. They will not understand anything. Yeah, but it is not boring. The boredom is because of your incapacity of understanding the language.
So that should be something that they should improve first before approaching
first there. Okay, and teachers are there to help in class. Okay, but I think every student need to first develop the language skills. Okay. Obviously, there are many other dimensions, other ways of approaching literature. They can be provided over the period of time, like during the class, okay, how to approach, like using some technical way to deal with the text, okay, reading in chunks, okay, stopping after everyday reading instead of just reading at a stretch. You have to stop to think because these writings are, you see, most of the times you will find fragmented, okay. You have read the whole paragraph or stanza, but you have not understood because it is difficult for you to follow the progression, okay, because it is so disjointed, it is so fragmented, okay. It is, I mean, using so stream of consciousness, taking a stream of consciousness that, okay, an individual author get confused to follow, okay. You have to learn the skill of following the progression of event.
Sir, as you're suggesting that the students must, like, they should have a strong linguistic knowledge to explore the modern literature. Sir, could it be that along with this linguistic knowledge, they must also like be a bit acknowledged about the historical context or the historical occurrences that happened
during that
during the
literary period?
Historical
literary,
background, yes, of course. Yes, of
so they
course.
can relate to the
Yes, right.
author's perspective of the situation or the setting that they are depicting the literary piece into.
I feel like that adds a lot more to the picture
Yeah,
when we
yeah.
study.
To approach literature, we have a multiple perspectives, like the historical perspective, the reader's response perspective, then modernist perspective, postmodernist perspective, existential perspective, or Marxist perspective, feminist perspective, right? Okay, there are different perspectives through which you can deal with the text. Okay, so one of them is historical. Okay, you have to connect it with the historical background. Okay, and you have attended a number of literature courses. That when a literary text is taught, at the same time teacher tries to give the background of the literary period, okay, on which context this text was written, right? So historical background knowledge is also very important to
Historicism.
understand. Yeah, historicism. Yeah. So you're right. Yeah, historical background is important also to understand the essence of the text, what the writer is trying to make us understand, and also it will help the audience to create their own meaning from the text, which the writer himself or herself had never thought of.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us, sir, and giving
you,
us
sir.
your valuable time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on the first part of our 4-part podcast on modernist literature.
Thank you very much. Thank you, audience.
We'll have 3 more coming up. Make sure you tune in for those. Asif, do you have anything to say?
Thank you for joining us today. There's more coming.